Yo, G, they can't stop me from rapping, can they? Can they hop?
You're listening to Tune Dig, a podcast for music lovers. The premise is simple. In each episode, we dig deep into an album we love, and then we give away a copy to you of that album on vinyl. Go to tunedig.com to see what's up for grabs and learn more about us. Today, we're talking about Kanye West, the college dropout.
You understand how I feel right now, man. It's your boy Kanye Chitter.
I want to start this episode by saying I was really not looking forward to having this conversation before we dug in.
The Kanye West conversation.
Right.
Every parent dreads it.
Timmy, sit down. I need to talk to you about something serious. This is the first episode that really makes me appreciate this podcast to the extent that I think I fully can, because time and memory had convinced me that I probably wasn't ever that big a Kanye fan and nothing that he had done was really that big a deal. So I feel like I'm almost reclaiming my own narrative around Kanye just by doing this. So thank you.
I love that this is the least contentious, brilliant Kanye moment. The awareness of his own greatness was coming out at the same time in this record as the self-awareness of not thinking too highly of himself, of cautioning other people about thinking too highly of themselves. And then conversely, almost in the same song, a lot of the time, trying to convince people to think more highly of themselves.
I love that you talk about the different layers of awareness, and that seems to be the thing that has maybe been lost over the years. There's a biting sense of humor on this record. The subject matter was heavy, but he wrapped it in this like dark comedy thing. There was like a sitcom delivery. And the longer that I listened to it, the more that it felt like South Park to me.
There are a lot of people out there making up rumors about me that are malicious and untrue. But I'm going to prove once and for all, I am not a fish. Because I am a genius, I have ascertained that
it skewered everything. It skewered rich people and himself and materialism and all 32 of those skits or whatever. But he kind of goes everywhere, right? Like no stone is left unturned. And there's just such an energy and such an intensity. It's like he's doing 20 years worth of homework and turning it in all at once. It's unbelievable and exhausting, but it's all really razor sharp.
This thing was recorded, produced over the period of 4 years, produced mostly by Kanye himself. Even though officially he recorded at the record plant in LA, most of the production was in his own apartment or wherever he was. He would walk around carrying a Louis Vuitton backpack filled with old discs and demos and just take them back and forth to the studio. One of the quotes said he crafted this production 15 minutes at a time. The record leaked months before release, and he used the feedback from the leak to do more production work before the album itself got released again.
That's what was weird about people thinking it was so crazy when he was swapping out versions on streaming of The Life of Pablo. It's like, guys, he's been doing this the whole time. He's never married to this is exactly what this piece of work is. It's weird to use a word like egoless to describe Kanye West ever, but that he is egoless enough to say this art is not static. It needs to change. It needs to interact with the world it's in at a given moment. It's like, that is genius. That is a next level way to view your art. And that he's been doing that since he was very young and hungry is incredible.
Tony Williams, who's saying on Spaceship, he said, I remember asking Kanye if I could do something on the album. And basically his response was, in Kanye's style. I love that people can say in Kanye's style, because it always precedes a statement like this. Yeah, everybody wants to be on the album. And that was his way of telling him that, you're probably not going to get on this particular album. But then he picked up Kanye from the airport after that, not long before the deadline for the album, like 2 weeks before it. Kanye played Spaceship in the car on his way back, and Tony started harmonizing with it.
I wish I could buy me a spaceship and fly past the sky. I've been working this great shift and I ain't made shit. I wish I could buy me a spaceship and fly past the sky.
Kanye went, oh, I want you to do that on the record. And then brought him right there, like immediately brought him into the studio to record the harmony part for that song.
That's amazing.
I think that approach made everything feel so full and fresh in a way that's just hard to describe.
Kanye has had such a good marketing mind for so long, and he just has such an advertiser's sensibility of how to make it clever and digestible and repeatable. But he can also be really profound. All Falls Down is one of those ones that every 3 or 4 bars you're just like, oh my God.
That idea of a Louis Vuitton backpack full of tapes, full of ideas, like just feels like it starts to work. Like he's like, you're in the room with Morty's mind blowers and you're just like shoving a new one in your head over and over again. And then you go, oh, those two go together.
I say fuck the police, that's how I treat them. We buy our way out of jail, but we can't buy freedom. We'll buy a lot of clothes, but we don't really need them. Things we buy to cover up what's inside. Cause they made us hate ourselves and love their wealth. That's why shorty's hollering where the ball is at. Drug dealer by Jordan, crack kid by crack. And the white man get paid off for all of that. But I ain't even
that he could pack so much that was thought-provoking into a single line. You know, he did 3 or 4 bars and he was like, and the white man get paid off of all of that. And to be a white kid in the suburbs that had never really thought about the systems that allowed things like that to happen. And he did it in kind of a toss-off line where he was like, well, yeah, I mean, I've known this my whole life. Like, this is common knowledge where I come from. It was a real deceptive Trojan horsey way to get you think about a huge thing because he wasn't beating you over the head with it. There was sort of a flippance and his delivery was so cool and it was so first person POV. And that's a thread that goes through a lot of the record for me is like, you just see him as this person that's really interesting and you want to know more about him. And so when he says things like that about injustices or things that are happening to him or that he's witnessing, you're like, oh yeah, man, that's messed up.
You take a great hook, those lines that you're pointing out, it flows all the way through that video where you are Kanye experiencing so much of that stuff. And like, it just feels like it works together. Like I remember feeling like that music video felt like it belonged with the song. And that's such a rare feeling for video. Like it takes such vision for somebody to be able to have a thread that can go through everything like that. And that's just one song. Yeah. Right.
And the other thing that struck me when I was listening through the record the other day in preparation for this was there are 21 tracks on this. And yeah, a lot of them are skits, but every third song or so is a massive career making song. And there are no less than half a dozen of them on this record. All Falls Down and Jesus Walks and Spaceship and Workout Plan and Slow Jams and School Spirit. They're all very different. They all cover different subject matter. They all have a different sound, but they all have that Kanye voice. They all have that Kanye cadence and they all swing for the fences. You know, it's any of those songs would have been huge for one artist, for a number of artists, and that they're all on one record and all on his first big record. You're just like, good God, this guy had a lot in the tank.
You can't overemphasize how masterful this whole thing was. Hit after hit. He's obviously doing all the verses himself. He's doing all the production himself. But then inside of that, inside of cranking out an entire album worth of hits, he's doing 2 completely new things at one time. That's hard to appreciate in hindsight. He had trouble getting a record label to release this stuff because his approach to hip hop was culturally different than everything else that was being signed hip hop at the time, right?
He said, maybe I should have been wearing a basketball jersey.
I think the hilarious thing about it for people like us at this time is when you go back to try to understand what do you call the phase of hip hop before Kanye West changed the phase of hip hop, and it's called gangster rap.
But it's weird because like, was it though? Like was big time? Like when I think about the thing that came before Kanye being conscientious and calling out materialism, I always think of stuff like No Limit and Cash Money and stuff with the pen and pixel artwork. And it was just about opulence. It was just about materialism. Like, it wasn't, sure, they talked about street stuff, but I think about the song Number One Stunna as being like the antithesis of a Kanye 04 thing.
Baby Brian B. Bubble, you can call me with your flip. Hopping out the platinum Hummer with the platinum grill, with the platinum pieces and the platinum chain, with the platinum watches and the platinum ring.
That had to happen to allow Kanye to kind of windfall in behind that. Kanye was the response to that thing, but that all of that was kind of lumped in as gangster rap just showed how worlds apart we were, which is weird because it wasn't that long ago. But when you look back on this stuff, it feels like a generation ago.
I guess the irony here is like, you couldn't have Drake unless Kanye had started this.
Right. Absolutely.
So thanks. So not only is he struggling to change hip hop in a way that allows room for introspection and self-awareness, he's also simultaneously creating a new production style. Chipmunk soul is the actual phrase that would come to refer to an entirely new production style that he did, taking old soul samples and speeding them up and changing the vocal register and all that stuff to make hooks out of it. And he has always been a master of sampling.
He wasn't the first to do it. That in a lot of ways obviously was like a sample of hip hop the whole time. It started getting interesting, I think, with Juicy J as a producer. They had started coming into their own with soul samples, but like, he was the first one to build a whole orchestral world around it. And like, that was really the differentiator, was he built a sound around it rather than placing it in as an element. But it was also used as kind of like a humorous tool. To me, the peak chipmunk soul thing for Kanye is slow jams. Like, it was used to really almost farcical effect. And everything about that song is so funny because it's so meta, right? He basically writes like a sarcastic boner jam to the degree that like he got Jamie Foxx on it. And I read a retrospective of critics reviewing their reviews of College Dropout 10 years later. Like, that was my favorite article that I read about this whole thing. One person remarked that even the way that he used his guest seemed provocative. Like, there was even a statement in that, so that he used Jamie Foxx on that song, this sort of like funny guy that was starting to get into a serious R&B career, and literally sang Al Green. Like, he just sang the names of R&B singers instead of any moves that those people would have done, is such a middle finger. It to me is such a good microcosm of the whole College Dropout experience.
Before I forget, speaking of reviewers reviewing their reviews way later, one of my favorite things, and when I say favorite, one of the things I hate most about the internet is Pitchfork's undying just worship of Kanye. Even this original record like launched that ridiculous love affair between them, where they called this flawed, overlong, hypocritical, egotistical, and altogether terrific. Thanks, Pitchfork. And ever since then, every album has been like that.
A similar thing happened with Rolling Stone. John Caramanica, I don't know how to pronounce his name, but he's a great music writer. And he wrote the College Dropout review for Rolling Stone, and they gave it 3.5 stars. And he said in this retrospective, basically like, yeah, that was the best rating that we could give it at the time because it was Rolling Stone. And if it wasn't like the biggest rap album in the world, they just weren't going to do that. He stopped just short of being like, yeah, Rolling Stone's racist. And if you're not Bruce Springsteen, you're not going to get 5 stars, Bruce Springsteen or U2. And now it's the same thing with Rolling Stone. They love him because he's entered this like Bono, like zeitgeist of larger than life thing. But back then they were like, nah, he's just a regular black dude doing a art form that we don't like.
Why is hip hop in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame?
Yeah. Even though our entire art form that we base this magazine on is like based on bastardizing black music. There are some other really good tidbits from that retrospective. John Caramanica said, he seemed really important at the time, not just for being a good producer. There are plenty of good producers, but for being a producer that changed the sound of radio and of artists who are more established than him. So you talked about how him having a very fully established sound. Obviously, he was a very significant figure in evolving how Jay-Z was presented to the world. And you have to admire someone who has enough chutzpah and enough vision and confidence in his vision to not just be a guy alone in a room starting an idea, but going into the room with far more successful people and having them buy his idea. He has had such an outsized influence, partly because of that self-belief, but largely because he delivered on that self-belief. He knew he was onto something and he delivered it in spades here. And I hear so much in this record that was like, it had never been done to that point, but it's been done thousands of times since then. And I didn't realize how much of popular culture was steeped in this stuff. He created a whole new vocabulary.
If you're going to be that outrageously almost egomaniacal, there are 2 choices. You can either deliver, which Kanye did, and almost no one ever does, or you recede back into the ether and no one notices you and they just say, well, that guy was full of himself and wasn't good. It's kind of a totally different approach than someone like me would take, who was taught to be super conservative and build things up over time, right? Spend 15 years networking to get the right opportunity, seize on the right moment. Don't screw that up. Take that one and network more, like, and, you know, build that up towards some eventual thing. Whereas he was like, you know, I feel like I have enough to go on, so why don't I try this? And eventually someone will let me release an album. And I don't know, I'll get 10 Grammy nominations on my first one, including best hip hop song, best rap album. There's so many concentric circles of that concept on all of these songs. You've kind of touched on it. When you get to Jesus Walks, that thing that everybody loved, not only does it have outrageously good production, the song itself is great, his delivery is great.
We at war. We at war with terrorism, racism, but most of all, we at war with ourselves. God, show me the way, because the devil's trying to...
That part not far into the song where he like takes a deep breath when he's delivering.
Try to catch it. It's kind of hard getting choked by the Texas. Yeah, I checked the...
All of that stuff is so well done. And then inside of the song, he's talking about if he ever writes a song about what this song is about, that it'll never get played. And it ends up being the best hip hop song of the year.
Right.
The further away you get from stuff like that, you have to, it's almost like you become less certain about what he thought about when he was saying it. Because it's almost like the first time you hear it, you go, oh, look at him. He got famous and he didn't expect it. Not long after that, you go, that is definitely not the case. He totally expected to get famous. It's like the further away you get from it, kind of the more in depth it becomes.
Yeah. You talked earlier about the ethos of working until it reflected the profundity and the brilliance of what he knew the core idea of the thing was. He wasn't going to settle until it really got all the way there. And Jesus Walks is, to me, the best example of that on this record. Not the song, but the video. So there's 2 versions of this video out there, right? The first one is pretty straightforward in its narrative. The song is about reclaiming the narrative of who are Jesus's children: strippers, hustlers, drug dealers. Jesus walks with them. But the first version of the video is things happening in the streets on the south side of Chicago, and he's a preacher, and you know, there are some tropes, there are some cliches. It waters down the message of the song a little bit almost, because it feels like something you've seen before, something you've heard, and you're like, all right, well, this is conscious rap, whatever, I get it. But he goes back and does a second version of this video that's even higher budget and has this cinematic quality to it. Like a lot of it has a film grain to it. And it's this incredible high concept video where in addition to this great performance that he turns in front of the green screen with the flames behind him, in some of the shots and in the close up, there's a halo light over him, right? So that great dichotomy in a really beautiful, subtle way. But then there's this thing happening with the prison chain gang and this very visual 13th Amendment prison is slavery motif that's happening where the chain gang goes and cuts down this tree that then becomes a cross that a Klansman carries that then lights on fire, that then even in the last shot of the video, the Klansman is also on fire and he drops the cross and it lands upside down. All that happens and it looks like a mini film. And he got to the point where he was doing really opulent, blown out stuff kind of on the regular. Runaway was kind of the logical endpoint of that later. But there was nothing happening like that. Like that's Criterion Collection type stuff. So he knew there was a beautiful, powerful, transcendent message in this song. And he knew that he was too literal with it when he did it the first time in a video. So that he went back to the drawing board, had that video pulled from everywhere and came back and said, no, this is important. I need to treat this like Seventh Seal or Federico Fellini, or like this needs to be timeless. My life is dope and I do dope shit.
And this is when everyone knew Kanye was going to be a star. And we were watching sketches. We were like, yeah, we could watch some sketches. No one's ever seen these before. We show him like the Rick James sketch and all these great sketches. And in the middle of it, Kanye's phone rings, and he's like, hello? He goes, no, I can't. No, because I'm at the edit for the Dave Chappelle show, watching sketches that no one's seen before. And then it goes like this, because my life is dope, and I do dope, and he hung up the phone.
He was willing to put it all on the line for a message like that. And that early in your career of all times to be like, no, I will not settle. I am going to take a risk. Like there was something so maverick and so badass about that. That's a thing that I had totally forgotten. But that whole part of this narrative alone will make me defend Kanye until the end of my days, because that is worth it. Like that is the reason that we keep making music and art, because it can get to that place that you got to dig a little deeper for, you got to fight a little harder for, because it's there. And if you're somebody with as big a vision as Kanye, you can't stop until it's realized.
And there's that thing again where he's not afraid to say, the first time I did this, it wasn't good enough. I'm going to do it again.
Very iterative.
There is the thickest layer of irony, and we know it, that the person who's teaching us about not tying ourselves too much to our first attempt is Kanye. But that's okay. Like, that's why it's so great to be able to reach in and take stuff from this record. He would continue to perpetuate that idea of like, if it's not good enough the first time, even if other people think it's great the first time, if I don't think it's good enough, I'll just do it again.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with having two versions of updating it.
Right.
Version 1.1, final.
There's something to love so much about, he's clearly not interested in the race for second place. Like, he doesn't want to be the best one. He wants to be the only one.
It's a big, hairy American winning machine. If you ain't first, you're last. You know what I'm talking about? That phrase is trademark, not to use it outside tradition of Ricky Bobby.
He wants to be in the rarefied air category of a Beatles or an Apple. These ridiculous comparisons he makes later in these interviews to comparing himself to Steve Jobs and great architects and whatever. The ambitions are clearly laid out on this record that he wants to be set apart. Hip hop is just a template because he's a dude from the south side of Chicago, right? But he wants to do grandly ambitious, world-changing stuff. And that's why almost 15 years on, this in retrospect is clearly a watershed hip-hop record. Like, this belongs in the pantheon with the Illmatics and the Life After Deaths and all of those records. And it's so different from all of the other records that you would put in the canon of great hip-hop. And that's all the more reason to include it.
It's almost hard to think of a modern example of how good he was at recognizing opportunities to dig in and be great. Even remembering back for this record, the thing that hooked me was still Through the Wire, which is sure, like that's how a lot of people were definitely exposed to it, right? But like that idea that this guy is in a near fatal car crash late 2002 and then sees that as an opportunity to channel something different and something meatier into creating the music, to the point to where you can record verses with your mouth wired shut and it somehow doesn't come across gimmicky, was a thing that blew my high school brain apart.
I really apologize to everyone right now if it's unclear at all, man. They got my mouth wired shut for like, I don't know, the doctor said like 6 weeks. You know, I had reconstructive surgery on my jaw. I looked in the mirror, half of my jaw was in the back of my mouth, man. I couldn't believe it. And I'm still here for y'all right now, man. This is what I got to say right here, though.
There's so few examples of being able to be earnest and timely at the same time and have it executed so well. He talks about the album being his medicine, and he's working through this song. He released that song originally on a mixtape in 2002 when he announced that he was recording this album that would be released later. And he talked about that the theme of this album was to just make your own decisions and don't let society tell you that this is what you have to do. And those sound like such platitudes. Like we were even, watching him give interviews beforehand that seem like maybe he hasn't really practiced saying the things he wants to say yet, because they just seem like inspirational posters said by somebody who was really trying to make the pop collar thing happen for a minute. But the fact that that person, whoever it was, could record Through the Wire and have that just gut come across in the song itself was nuts. And then to layer that on top of all that crazy production means to sample Shaka Khan in that song, along with all the other great samples that are happening on the record. The other thing I just thought was cool, kind of trivia to mention, because you mentioned School Spirit. In order to get Aretha's permission to sample her in that song, he had to edit out any curse words, including in the unedited version.
School Spirit.
If you listen, there's no unedited version of School Spirit because she made him not have any curse words in it.
I never noticed that. R.I.P. Aretha. Man, she really was the best. She was too real.
We have spent this whole time talking about Kanye walking into a room and telling everybody else what's up. And Aretha is like, no, you will wash your mouth out with soap.
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely. You're right. You are so right. Thank you for the opportunity to be here with you today. It really is an honor.
I mean, think about Kanye's willingness to relent to that weird request just to get her sample on a song. Like, that's so great.
You know what that is, though? That's because, and I mean this truly as a high compliment, Kanye was a mama's boy. Kanye was raised by an incredible woman who was a strong presence in his life. And, a lot of what we've talked about probably is at least loosely correlated to losing his mom. Not changing his headspace pretty irrevocably. But Aretha is a powerful woman, much like his mom was, smart and in control and so irreplaceable that I think he just recognized something that he knew he needed to respect. That's a great story, man.
Right. The sax performance on Last Call, that really kind of weird, long song that eventually devolves into something trippy at the very end of the album. That sax performance was from Keith Anderson, who played with Prince.
So, after they picked that Truth beat, I was figuring I was going to get some more work. But shit just wasn't popping off like that. I was staying in Chicago. I had my own apartment. I'll be doing like just beats for local acts just to try to keep the lights on and be able to go out and buy, get a Pelly off layaway, get some Jordans or something, get a Techno Marine. That's what we wore back then. I made this one beat
So there's just like so much greatness, just like all over all these different parts, not just in the samples, but in the influences, in people like Mos Def showing up, like all kinds of stuff like that. It's just so rich.
Hopefully one day everyone will, but everyone should own a copy of this record, like Purple Rain. This record is capital I important. And then he graduated.
I called G. I said, man, you think we can still get that deal with Rockefeller?
Go to tunedig.com to sign up for our emails and click the link in the email when you want to win. That's it.